On April 1st, 2023, a transgender influencer posted a 60-second video on Instagram, holding a personalized beer can with her face on it. Within weeks, Bud Light would lose its 22-year reign as America's best-selling beer. The parent company would shed roughly $5 to $6 billion in market value. Executives would be placed on leave, and an entire industry would retreat from the marketing strategies they had embraced for years. One Instagram post, one customized can that was never even sold in stores. How did this become the most damaging brand crisis in modern American corporate history? Because the real disaster was not the partnership. It was what came after. Dylan Mulvaney had become one of social media's most recognizable faces through a simple concept, documenting her gender transition one day at a time. Her TikTok series, Days of Girlhood, launched in March 2022. Day 1 of being a girl. Day 2. Day 3. By early 2023, she'd posted over 365 daily updates and accumulated more than 10 million TikTok followers and nearly 2 million on Instagram. Major brands had noticed. Nike partnered with her. So did Kate Spade, Ulta Beauty, and CeraVe. None of those collaborations generated significant controversy. Then came Bud Light. To celebrate day 365 of her transition, a full year, Bud Light sent Mulvaney a personalized can featuring her face. Not a commercial product. Not something you could buy in stores. A commemorative gift, the kind the brand routinely sent to influencers, athletes, and celebrities. On April 1st, she posted an Instagram video showing the can. A paid partnership. 60 seconds. That was the entire campaign. One sponsored post. One custom can. 0 national advertising. And it nearly destroyed the brand. The decision came from Bud Light's marketing leadership, which was trying to solve a problem that had nothing to do with Dylan Mulvaney. Bud Light was losing younger drinkers. The brand that had dominated American beer for 2 decades was watching its core demographic age out, while millennials and Generation Z gravitated toward craft beer, hard seltzer, and imported options like Modelo. Alyssa Heinerscheid had just become the first woman to serve as vice president of marketing for Bud Light. In a podcast interview a few weeks before the Mulvaney partnership, she laid out her vision for evolving the brand. The old Bud Light, she said, had become fratty and out of touch. She wanted to attract younger, more diverse consumers without alienating the existing base. It was a reasonable business objective. Brands evolve or they die. But Heinerscheid was about to learn that some brands do not get to evolve, at least not in the way she imagined. The backlash materialized faster than anyone anticipated. By April 3rd, conservative commentators had begun circulating the Mulvaney video. By April 4th, the hashtag boycott Bud Light was trending nationally. By April 5th, Kid Rock had posted the video that would define the entire controversy. In it, he stands outside with cases of Bud Light stacked on a table. He raises an automatic rifle. He opens fire, shredding the cans while shouting profanities. The video accumulated tens of millions of views within days. Country artist Travis Tritt announced he was removing all Anheuser-Busch products from his tour rider. Other musicians followed. Conservative media, including Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, and Laura Ingraham, devoted segment after segment to the story. Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire provided daily amplification. The framing was consistent across every platform. Go woke, go broke. And Bud Light was about to prove it. What made this boycott different from most was that people actually followed through. Bar owners in conservative regions announced they'd stop serving Bud Light. Retailers reported immediate sales declines. Videos flooded social media, showing people pouring Bud Light down drains, bartenders pulling it from taps, customers ostentatiously ordering anything but Bud Light. Most boycotts fizzle because they require sacrifice. This one didn't. Switching from Bud Light to Coors Light or Miller Lite cost nothing. The alternatives were sitting right there on the same shelf, at the same price, tasting more or less the same. For millions of consumers, abandoning Bud Light became the easiest possible way to make a political statement. What almost no one noticed at the time was that this wasn't peaking yet. The real damage didn't show up in headlines. It showed up weeks later in distributor reports no one outside the industry reads. And through all of it, Anheuser-Busch said almost nothing. For roughly 2 weeks after the backlash erupted, the company remained largely silent. Initial statements were generic deflections. Bud Light said it works with hundreds of influencers, and this was described as a personalized gift. Nothing to see here. The silence was catastrophic. It allowed critics to completely control the narrative. Every day without a clear corporate response was another day for the boycott to harden, for the memes to spread, for the story to grow. On April 14th, Chief Executive Officer Brendan Whitworth finally released a statement. It was carefully crafted to offend no one. It offended everyone. Whitworth said they never intended to be part of a discussion that divides people. He said the company is in the business of bringing people together over a beer. The statement mentioned his military service. It spoke about protecting great American brands. It spoke vaguely about patriotic values. What it did not do was mention Dylan Mulvaney by name. It did not defend the partnership. It did not apologize to the conservatives who were boycotting. It was the corporate equivalent of saying nothing while appearing to say something. The problem with trying to please everyone is that you end up pleasing no one. Conservatives found no apology in the statement. There was no acknowledgement that the partnership was a mistake. There was no promise to change course. So the boycott continued. Progressives saw something worse. They saw a corporation abandoning a trans woman who was now facing massive online harassment. Anheuser-Busch had chosen to partner with Dylan Mulvaney. And the moment that partnership became controversial, the company threw her overboard without even saying her name. By late April, both Alyssa Heinerscheid and her boss, Daniel Blake, had been placed on leave. The company called it voluntary. No one believed that. Neither appeared to return to their positions. The executives who made the decision were gone. The company still would not say whether the decision itself was right or wrong. Dylan Mulvaney eventually broke her silence months later. She said she had been ghosted by Anheuser-Busch. No support came during the harassment campaign against her. No outreach, no defense. If a company partners with a trans person, she said, it should be prepared to stand by that decision. Anheuser-Busch was not prepared. The sales collapse exceeded every projection. In the week ending April 22nd, Bud Light sales dropped roughly 17% compared to the previous year. By mid-May, the decline had reached 23 to 24%. By late May, it hit 28 to 29%. For distributors, this was not an abstract market shift. Routes were cut. Warehouses reduced orders. In some rural regions, Bud Light effectively vanished from shelves, not because it was banned, but because no one was asking for it anymore. Then came June, and the unthinkable happened. Modelo Especial, a Mexican heritage beer that had been steadily gaining market share for years, officially surpassed Bud Light as the best-selling beer in America. For 22 years, Bud Light had held that position. The brand was synonymous with American beer. Super Bowl commercials, NFL sponsorships, the official drink of tailgates, and backyard barbecues from coast to coast. Now, it was number 2. The beer that replaced it was not even American. Anheuser-Busch's stock dropped roughly 10 to 15% in the immediate aftermath. Analysts estimated the company lost somewhere between $5 and $6 billion in market value. U.S. revenue losses for 2023 were projected between $400 million and over $1 billion. Distributors reported volume declines of 20 to 30% or higher. Rural and conservative-leaning markets were hit hardest. Some regions essentially stopped selling Bud Light entirely. Marketing experts tried to explain how one Instagram post could cause this much damage. Their conclusion: it was not really about Dylan Mulvaney. It was about brand positioning. Bud Light had spent decades building an identity around working-class, rural, traditionally masculine imagery. Sports, tailgates, the everyman consumer, blue-collar authenticity. That positioning created an audience with certain expectations about what Bud Light stood for. When the brand suddenly partnered with a transgender influencer known for videos about feminine fashion and makeup, the disconnect was jarring. Not because there is anything wrong with that content, but because it did not match what Bud Light's core consumers thought the brand represented. Compare that to Nike. When Nike partnered with Colin Kaepernick in 2018, there was backlash. People burned shoes. Boycotts were announced. But Nike's sales actually increased. Why? Because Nike had spent years cultivating progressive brand equity. Its core consumers expected cultural engagement. The Kaepernick partnership aligned with the brand's established identity. Bud Light had no such equity. The brand had not earned permission from its audience to take cultural positions. Leadership wanted to evolve the brand, but they tried to do it overnight, without preparing their consumers for the shift. And beer is uniquely vulnerable to boycotts. Unlike cars or phones or financial services, switching beer brands costs nothing. The alternatives are right there on the same shelf. You can act on your outrage without any personal sacrifice whatsoever. But that explanation still leaves one uncomfortable question unanswered. If this was just misalignment, why has Bud Light not recovered, even after doing everything right since? The anticipated recovery never came. Throughout the rest of 2023 and into 2024, Bud Light sales stabilized, but at a much lower level than before. The bleeding stopped, but the patient did not heal. As of early 2025, Bud Light has not regained the #1 position. Modelo Especial remains America's best-selling beer. Some analysts estimate Bud Light suffered permanent market share loss of 3 to 5 percentage points, suggesting the damage is not temporary. The broader impact extended far beyond one brand. Pride Month 2024 looked markedly different than previous years. Industry publications reported more muted corporate campaigns, reduced visible LGBT marketing, strategic decisions to move inclusive messaging from mainstream advertising to targeted channels where it would not attract attention. The chilling effect was measurable. Companies that had spent years publicly celebrating Pride suddenly got quiet. DEI consultants reported clients becoming substantially more risk-averse about any public positioning on cultural issues. The message had been received. Organized economic pressure could force corporate retreat. And if it could happen to America's biggest beer brand, it could happen to anyone. Crisis management experts conducted autopsies of what went wrong. Their conclusion was almost unanimous. The partnership itself was not the problem. It was a minor influencer engagement. One can, one post, no national advertising. With a competent response, it could have blown over in days. Anheuser-Busch had two viable options. Option 1, defend the partnership. Stand by Dylan Mulvaney. Accept short-term losses while building progressive brand equity. Weather the storm and emerge with a loyal new audience. The Nike Playbook. Option 2, rapid de-escalation. Immediately clarify the limited scope. Acknowledge conservative consumer concerns. Apologize if necessary. Move quickly before the narrative calcified. Clarify and act. Instead, they chose option 3, silence, followed by a statement that committed to nothing. They did not defend their decision. They did not apologize for it. They did not stand by Mulvaney. They did not distance from the partnership. They did not embrace the controversy as a values statement. They did not reject it as a mistake. They stood in the middle of the road and got hit by traffic from both directions. By 2024, Bud Light's marketing had retreated to deliberately apolitical territory. Super Bowl ads emphasized humor and product attributes. Sponsorships focused on the NFL and the UFC. The imagery was traditional, masculine, carefully safe. The brand that Heinerscheid wanted to evolve beyond the fratty had retreated precisely to that positioning. Except now, it was doing so from second place, with a tarnished reputation and a consumer base that had proven it could walk away. Some analysts see gradual recovery as possible if the brand maintains discipline and the news cycle moves on. Others argue the shift to Modelo reflects permanent market changes, the rise of Hispanic consumers, generational taste evolution, and a structural decline in light beer that predated the controversy. Bud Light may never be number one again. And even if it recovers the sales, it may never recover the identity. The irony is that Bud Light did eventually retreat to safety. Safe ads, safe humor, safe masculinity. But safety didn't bring the customers back. Because the moment a brand proves it can be pressured into silence, it teaches everyone watching exactly how fragile it is. The Bud Light controversy will be studied in business schools for decades, not as a lesson about transgender rights or conservative boycotts or culture wars, as a lesson about authenticity. Brands with genuine progressive values can survive backlash because their audiences expect cultural engagement. Brands with traditional positioning can thrive by staying in their lane. The catastrophe comes from misalignment, attempting cultural positioning that contradicts your established identity without preparing your audience for the shift. And when the backlash comes, you have to choose. Stand by your decision or reverse it. Defend your partner or apologize to your critics. Pick a side and accept the consequences. The one thing you cannot do is stand in the middle and say nothing. Anheuser-Busch tried to please everyone. They lost billions, proving that is impossible.